Welcome into the episode of Patrick Jones Baseball. This week, we are talking about travel baseball versus high school baseball. Which one's more important in the recruiting process, how they each play a vital role, and then we also talk a lot about competing throughout the entire season. Hope you enjoy it.
Hey, Patrick, we're going to talk about travel ball today. Yeah.
Let's do it. Travel
All
ball
right.
and high school baseball.
Cool. So everybody argues about travel ball versus high school baseball. And then, I think the real question is like, which one actually gets you recruited?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where they both do get you recruited, but they do it in different ways. And so what I mean by that is everyone always was going to say high school baseball doesn't matter at all. Eventually high school baseball is not even going to be a thing anymore. It's only going to be travel baseball. First off, I hope that never happens because there's a lot of value in high school baseball for a variety of reasons.
Agree.
I would say one of the biggest reasons high school baseball is valuable is not for what they think is the reason that it's valuable. It's valuable because what it allows college coaches to do is to vet the player through their high school coach, not through their travel coach. Because a lot of the times, let's for being honest, a lot of the travel coaches out there is what ends up happening is they end up, you want to sell your players because it makes your travel program look a lot better when you have kids who are being committed and being signed. So at times there's, the best coaches don't do this, travel coaches, but a lot of travel coaches, they might oversell players. Whereas you're more likely at the high school level, either the high school coach is a teacher there or a high school coach is someone who volunteers or whatever it is. And he's not obviously doing it for the money because anyone who coaches high school baseball knows you're not doing anything for the money. You're pretty much losing money.
Yeah.
But you can go to that coach because that coach truly does know the kid in and out. He didn't just meet him a couple weeks ago or had him fly in for a tournament or here or there. Like he sees him almost every day, especially if he teaches at the school. He knows his makeup. He knows the family dynamic. He knows all of that, the information that you can't see on the field. And so that's why high school baseball is so important, is because of that, the high school coach being able to give information to the college coach on who this kid actually is as a person and not just as a player. Because if we're being honest, it's easy to evaluate a kid on a field. Like that's not that hard. But it's hard to evaluate is the makeup component of it. I mean, everything else is you can see it with your own eyes, but what you can't see is the makeup component. So that's why high school baseball is so important. And that's, I would say, that the main reason how it helps you get recruited is they're gonna identify you as a lead in the summer through travel baseball, and then they're gonna vet you from a makeup standpoint through your high school.
Yeah. I think that I'm someone who is an assistant on a school program. And it's true. We're in the kids live in our community, right? Most of them anyway. And we see them kind of just around town, and we see them in contexts that are not just on a baseball field. They don't just show up at tournament time. So we see the broader view of them. And if, especially for the coaches that are teachers, even me as an assistant, I have access to my kids. I can see like their grades. And so we keep track of that to keep an eye on their eligibility. Stuff like that is just not the kind of thing that you would be thinking about or looking at as a just if you were just doing travel ball.
Yeah, and I think the thing is people might be listening to this, and here's what I always say is context matters. It matters for a lot of different reasons, but I think one of the main reasons it matters is because someone might listen to this and be like, "Oh, well, my kid got recruited through travel baseball. They saw him at one tournament and they offered him it, 2 weeks later, whatever it is." But I'm always looking at this from the element of like, okay, like what is the standard from the majority? What majority of the time,
Yeah.
what happens and how does it happen? And so this is how the majority of the time it does happen.
Yeah, for sure. Why does travel ball exist in the first place? I mean, because when I played, we did not have travel ball. We had select ball, is what it was called, and we would travel around to a wider area and play teams from around the area. But it wasn't called travel ball back in the day.
You're right. It was called select baseball. And it was a big deal too if you
It
were on a
was.
select team because there wasn't that many of them. So it was like, man, you must be good if you're on a select team. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the business component of it. I think that's one of the reasons that it got crazy, I guess it is still crazy. But the reason why travel ball, if you think about it, is in there to begin with and is a thing now is because it allows college coaches to watch a lot of players at one location because the reality is they don't have scouting departments at a college program. They have a few coaches who at specific times throughout the year because of budgets and because of time, they can go out and then see kids. And so it makes the most sense from a time standpoint for them to go out and see as many kids as possible in the shortest amount of time. And so that's why travel ball and travel tournaments and things like that are a thing, is one of the reasons, is for that specific reason. And there's tournaments all over the country for sure. There's some tournaments that are going to have college coaches that some tournaments aren't going to have college coaches at. I think a lot of people think that if they're just on specific teams, that that's going to guarantee that they're going to get exposure and offers and things like that. But the reality is it's not just that. Like, for one, like, you have to be playing on those high level travel teams. You can't just be on them and expect to get recruited. And then the other thing too is like, okay, like, what do you do when they see you? Because the reality is they can only go off of what they see. And so if you're even on some of these higher level travel teams and yet you don't produce when they come see you play, there's not a whole lot that they necessarily can do. They might try to go back and see you play again, but as we've said before, there's only so much time that they have. And so
Yeah.
from even a mindset standpoint, is you really do have to accept the fact that, hey, all you can do is what you can do and focus on and your own process. And whatever happens, happens, knowing that long term, whatever, if it's meant to be, it's going to happen. And if it's not, it's not. There's probably always going to be other opportunities for you. Parents, are you tired of spending money going from showcase to camp, not even knowing if a coach is even looking for your son's position or even knows his name? One of the reasons that I started my college baseball recruiting service is to help guide families throughout the recruiting process, so you're not having to waste money and time going from showcase or camp to camp. If you're interested in hearing more about how I can help your son, head to patrickjonesbaseball.com and fill out the form. That's patrickjonesbaseball.com. Fill out the form right on the homepage, and I'll be in touch. All right, back to the podcast.
Right. So there is a role. My 15-year-old is going to play travel ball for the first time this summer. We've waited a long time to get into it, but we just found a program. When we go to these tournaments, which is going to be new for our family, what is a coach actually looking for? So the college,
Well, before you ask that question,
yeah,
we talk about that. Why did you guys wait so long? Because waiting until you're 15, my first year playing travel, or I guess back then it was select ball, I was 14 or 15. But why did you guys wait so long? Because that feels like forever these days.
it does. And I did the same thing. It was the summer after my high school freshman year that I started playing select ball. For us, so my son is he's a freshman this year. This will be for his first year playing high school ball. It's my first year not coaching him. Like, I'm coaching my younger son this year in the middle school program. And he's just gotten to the point where so we played in rec ball, and then he was in the high school we have a fairly strong off-season and in-season training program through the school here. And that gave him the opportunity to develop. And he just wasn't at a place. I don't think he was at a place where travel ball was really right for him just yet. He was kind of he was sort of like the best player on a rec league team.
Mhm.
That's kind of where he was until probably last summer. We got toward the end of last summer, really throughout most of last year, his 8th grade season in middle school, and then the summer rec league we played in. He just threw the ball significantly harder than any of the other kids, and they didn't want to face him. So
Yeah.
he kind of was at a place where we need to get him playing against better competition so that he can be challenged. And
So
also, he's
it sounds like you didn't force it, right? You didn't
correct.
force the travel.
It was
You let it organically happen
Yeah, it
when
was
the
the right
time was
time.
right. Yeah.
And we had access to, because we have a really nice training facility here through the high school program. We just had access to places that he could play baseball and develop, that were really doing what he wanted to do. And he's funny. He was like, I don't want to travel all over the place. He's like, I get car sick. And that was he didn't really understand what travel ball was and what the opportunity was. And so it took a couple of the guys in the high school program, like a couple of the other coaches in the high school program, started to talk to him. They're like, dude, you're throwing in the 70s as an 8th grader. Like,
Yeah.
you're 6 foot tall as a freshman. You've got some things here that are, you have potential.
One of the coolest things that you had told me after you guys said that he was going to go and play on this travel team is you guys were driving back home, and you guys were driving by a college stadium, and he was like, whoa, like, I'm going to get a chance. Like, we're going to be able to play there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting because now more than ever, it's so like normalized that kids are like, oh yeah, we're going to fly here and play at all these great state places and this or that. And so it doesn't feel as special when it happens because they get it so early. And
Yeah.
so when you give someone so early, they don't appreciate it as much versus waiting a little bit longer. And it's like, man, now when you get there, this is incredible because you've never had it before. So it's not normal to you.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite thing that I had heard when you guys said, you had said that, yeah, we're gonna do this travel team. And on the way back home, he was like,
Yeah.
he couldn't believe it that they were gonna be able to play at this college field.
Yeah, it was University of Dayton. It's right off 75 there, right in downtown Dayton. He was like, "Whoa, that's the nicest stadium." The funny thing is, it's not as if we haven't driven by there many times before. Like
Yeah.
you can't drive around Dayton and not drive by there occasionally. It had never stood out to him as anything that interesting. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I get to play there, and now it becomes this thing that he's really excited about.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I love that.
What do these college coaches when they come to these big tournaments that I'm going to be going to now? What are they looking for?
Usually the way it works is they're not they usually don't show up to just random games. I mean, sometimes they will, especially if they have time in between games or just walking out or whatever, but they are usually and they have a schedule. They have an itinerary of what teams they're going to go watch before the tournament even starts. And then a lot of times it's like they're going to watch specific players because again, going back to their time is so valuable. They can't just wing it. Like they're going and seeing players who someone trusted contact has recommended that they go and see throughout the year that they've identified as a lead, and that's who they're going to go see. And so that's the first thing I'd say that a lot of times is the first thing anybody would see, which is going to be the body type of the player, because that's the first thing. If I go and just watch a game, any game, the first thing that I can see is what does the player physically look like? Does this look like a player who will be a very good college player for us in our program one day, just from a
Yeah,
physical standpoint, because that's the lens that they have is like, okay, they know what it takes to be a good college player on their team in their division. And so now it becomes, okay, does this player look like he could become that from a physical standpoint? Does he already look like that? Or how far away is he? Is he just skin and bone and it's going to be 3 years, 4 years away from now? Or is this a year or two? And by the time he gets to us, he's going to be physically mature enough to be able to compete at our level. That's the very first thing that they look at is going to be the body type because that's the first thing that anybody would look at.
yeah. Where do those college coaches? You say someone they trust gives them a recommendation to see a kid. Who is that? What kind of people give those recommendations?
It's a combination of things because it's going to be it's going to be anybody that college coach has a relationship with who they trust. And so it could be someone who texts them about a player. This is what I've always done is there's certain coaches and programs that I think do a really good job and I think would be a good fit for the player that I'm working with. And so I'll just text them or send them a DM on Twitter or whatever their preferred communication method is. And then usually at that point, if it's someone that they trust, then they're gonna write their name down on their board and then they'll follow the player, usually even on Twitter or if not, then they'll just make a mark of what team that they're on, and then they'll go and see him play that way. So it's a combination of things where it could be, uh, you know, college advisors like myself, could be other travel coaches, could be high school coaches, it could be instructors. It's a combination of usually of something of one of those that are considered to be a trusted contact for that college coach, just someone that they trust. Because otherwise, going back to the timepiece again, they can't afford to lose out on days in the summer with how limited that they are, and so
Yeah.
that's why the trust is so important in this recruiting process.
So is that where are these tournaments where they get a first look at a lot of players? Is that how it
Yeah,
works?
because I mean, if you're a high school player right now, it's definitely good to still stay in contact with college coaches throughout the year and send them messages and things like that. But the reality is really only the local colleges, by and large, unless you're a top player in the country, really only the local colleges are going to be the ones who go and might watch you play during the season because they're in season themselves. And so they
Yeah.
might use their day off to go and watch a local game, but that's going to be about it. So they're identifying players to go and watch in the summertime. Now, one of the things to note that this doesn't help high school kids, and high school recruiting is only going to get a whole lot harder with the new CBA agreement that's going to be happening in Major League Baseball probably next year, because probably the draft is going to go down to only 10 rounds. And so
Wow.
there's going to be a lot more high school players who are going to be going to college versus signing. And then there's a lot more college players who'll be staying in college versus signing too. And so it's going to get extremely difficult, even
Wow.
more difficult than now for high school players going forward. And because of that new CBA agreement, that's actually next year, next offseason. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But that's my prediction, and based on what I've heard and talked to with other people, is it's the draft's probably going to 10 rounds, and that's going to push everyone down even more than it already is.
Yeah. So they get a good look at a kid. They get a recommendation. They see him at a travel ball tournament. Where does high school baseball? How does that fit into the mix?
Well, kind of what I was saying earlier is it fits in the mix for a couple reasons. I'd say the first is partly going to depend on what division we're talking about here. As we're talking about Power 4, we're talking about mid-major D1, D2, D3, and AIGCO, because it's a little bit different for each. Power 4, they're probably going to vet the player, especially now because they can't afford to miss on high school players. So
Mm,
they're going to talk to the travel coach if they trust him. They'll probably at some point talk with the high school coach too, again, just on the makeup piece. And the same thing with pretty much all Division Ones, I'd say, at this point. And so that's why the high school piece, again, is so important, because I think a lot of times people think for high school baseball that there's not much value because there's not a lot of coaches at the games. But what they don't realize, it's everything that happens throughout the entire year that brings the value in terms of how you
yeah.
are as a student, how you are in the classroom, how you are in the halls and going to off-season workouts and showing up on time and doing things like that, because that's what's going to get reported to these college coaches from your high school coaches, because that's what they see from you throughout the year. And so it's all the little things that make up who you are. And I think a lot of times when you think of makeup in general, I had a college coach tell me this before. He's like, a lot of times people think makeup is just, oh, did this guy help an old person walk across the street? Oh, he must have good makeup. I was like, yeah, that means he's a nice kid, which is great. But makeup is are you a competitor in between those white lines? When you go 0 for 3 or 3 strikeouts, you're fourth at bat. Are you still competing, or are you down yourself? You've given up for the day and you've lost confidence in yourself. And so it's really figuring out the true makeup and true competitor of that player. Not just is he a good person, but is he a competitor? Does he have that killer instinct when he's out on the field too? And so I think that's what you really can see from a high school coach's standpoint, is this kid a competitor from everything he does throughout the entire year, from the schoolwork to showing up on time in off-season workouts to competing through games, through the ups and downs of the high school season. I like high school baseball for all those reasons, and so do a lot of college coaches, because it is the closest thing to college baseball, especially if
Yeah.
you're at a good high school program. If you don't play well, you might end up sitting. Guess what?
Yeah.
That's the way it's going to be at the college level too. And so I think for all those reasons, that's why high school baseball is important.
Yeah. This is the thing that we talk about as assistants, by the way, just to go behind the scenes a little bit. I was having a conversation with another one of the assistant coaches, and we were talking about this thing. It's like, when he was saying, when a college coach calls me and asks me about this player, I can say, hey, that kid right there, that kid is incredibly coachable, like, and
Yeah.
he learns fast, and his ceiling is basically unlimited. Like, he
Yeah.
can go as far as his physical abilities will take him.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something that is so valuable, because any coach can see. This is what a college coach told me one time. He's a power forward head coach. He's like, the best players stick out like a sore thumb on the field from a physical standpoint. They look different physically. They walk different. I mean, it's easy to be able to identify those players on a field. But what you don't know is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that makeup component of, man, like when this guy starts out the season struggling, because he will at some point, like he's going to struggle like
Right.
he's never struggled before, because he's always been the best player on his high school team, his travel team. He's been the rankings. And I mean, I love this story that I heard from this college coach one time not that long ago. And he's like, here's the biggest issue in all this right now. And he's not saying that there was like these kids are in the wrong or the right, or he's like, just the way it is because of social media. He's like, a lot of these kids, they care about their image online. They care about followers. They care about rankings.
Yeah.
They care about their high school stats and the gear and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, "Patrick, I gotta be honest with you, like, here's the reality. I don't care about any of those things. Like, when he gets to campus, I do not care what his ranking was, how many other offers he had, if he has an NIL deal or any of that stuff. The only thing that I care about," and he looked behind because their home field was behind us from it in his office. He goes, "The only thing I care about is he going to produce in between those white lines once the spring comes? That's the only thing I
Yeah.
care about." And I think that's the thing that's it's easy to get lost in this because you see all these, oh, you got NIL, oh, you got brand, how many followers you got, your rankings, there's social media, this company's posting you, that company's not, you have all these offers and the other person doesn't. It's easy to get lost in and forget the fact that you can have all that stuff if you do not produce come spring of your freshman year. I mean, especially if you're playing with the big boys, you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. And so I think that's the thing to always keep in the back of your mind. And I think this might be the third episode I've mentioned this, and I'm going to mention it again. Watching it, The Last Dance, always I find it ironic. The one athlete who has the biggest brand out
Yeah.
of anybody and makes the most money out of any athlete in the history of the world is an athlete who has never once been on social media, has never once posted anything. It doesn't do any of that stuff. All he did was be the best at his job that he possibly could have been and better at his job than anybody else was at their job in the history of the world. And because he was that good at his job, he magically makes more money off of his brand than anybody else, even though
Yep.
he's not even on social media. And that's Michael Jordan. And so
Yeah.
at the end of the day, don't get caught up in the rankings. Don't caught up in the followers or the NIL deal or this my money. If you're that good, if you're better at your job than anybody else is at theirs in the entire world, all that stuff will take care of itself.
Yeah. So what's the formula then? Is it true that being on the best travel team you can find will automatically guarantee you get recruited really well?
No, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. So getting on a really good travel team, it is important. It's important because you're in the right tournaments.
Right.
And if you're not in, I mean, I've had players in the past before where they're good players, but they weren't in any tournaments. And so it's hard for a college coach to justify driving 3 hours to go watch one kid play when he could drive 2 hours potentially and watch 15 kids play. And so I think that's what is important is being in those right tournaments. Doesn't mean you got to be traveling a long distance. And the biggest part of all this is what's the skill set of that player, because you definitely don't need to be traveling. So there is so much context put into this. So it's hard to give a generic example, but always remember they're recruiting players, they're not recruiting teams. And
Yeah.
so even if you're on a really good team, you're not just getting recruited just because you're on a team. Like they're recruiting the individual. Now they may have a track record of recruiting players from that program, which definitely is a thing. But you want to find a travel team that you're playing on all the time, right? That you
Yeah.
get to chance to play. That's going to push you. There's ideally some players on that team that are better than you, but not so much to the point where you're never not going to get to play. And so you're going to need somebody to give you maybe an honest opinion. And ideally, it's that travel coach who's like, hey, you might not get to play if you're on this team as much as maybe somewhere else, but you need someone to give you some honest opinion of where you would be a good fit for you, so you can play. So I think that the most important thing is number one, they recruit players, not teams. Number two is you got to make sure that you're going to get a chance to play. And then three is you pick a team that's going to be in tournaments that where the coaches that fit your skill set are going to be at.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Like it.
to it. I mean, there are. It's a simple process, but there's so many variables, and that's what makes it feel complex.
Yeah. We had opportunity to we had invites from a couple different travel teams to kind of think about which one to join. And ultimately we feel really good about the one that we picked for all the reasons that you said, that they have all the right tournaments, the culture is good. And then one other thing I would add is the team that we went with has a really strong reputation for developing players like in the off season. And so they've got a facility, they've got good coaches that will be in there, and they've just got a really cool culture of kids from the older teams will hang out kind of in the space and do all of their work with some of the kids from the younger teams. And to us, that's really valuable too. Just having
Yeah.
that opportunity to develop in the off season. That was a really strong, that was a really strong piece of it and really important to us.
Yeah, and that should be important to everybody. I mean, the environment is huge, who you're around, who you're surrounded with. So I think
Yeah.
that's very wise.
Yeah, it wasn't just like show up for the tournaments, and that's the whole experience of the team. And there are plenty of teams that are just like that, and there's times for that, I think. But for us, that's what was right for us at the time. So put it together for me then. So travel ball plus high school ball. How should a player be approaching both those things?
Travel ball is gonna probably get you seen. High school ball is going to vet you from a character standpoint. And so that's why both are important. One isn't necessarily more important than the other, I would say. They're valuable for different reasons. And so you should take them both very seriously. Don't just overlook high school ball and think, oh, the competition's not good or hear that type of thing. The pitching's too slow. I was like, well, if pitching slow gets you out, then shoot, I'll just throw some. If I and you end up playing in college, then if we knew that, we would just have somebody lob the ball in there each time.
Right.
So you gotta be able to make adjustments and understand you're gonna get out against bad pitching too. It's just part of it. And the most valuable thing is the winning piece of it and competing and playing to win, which is why I like high school baseball and hope it never goes away. So I'd
Love it.
say travel ball exposure, ability, which is gonna help you from a development standpoint, and then the communication, and that's gonna help you from a recruiting standpoint too. So most players only focus on the first one, which is just the exposure piece, but the development and the communication is huge.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Happy school season to all of you listening, other than those of you in Iowa, I suppose. Um, but make sure you're
Excellent.
competing out there on the field, I think is the message of today's episode.
Yep.